Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into a really intricate federal court case. We're going to focus in on just one day, but it's a pretty crucial day of testimony. Gives you a real window into the dynamics being argued.
That's right. This deep dive is all about day 22 of the U.S. versus Shawn P. Combs trial, and our main focus. It's the continued cross-examination of the witness known as Jane Doe. The defense team is still questioning her.
So our mission here, like always with the deep dive, is to sort of guide you through the source material we've got. For this one, it's a transcript, comes from a publicly available recording of what happened in court that day.
Exactly. And we're here to pull out the key bits, the important takeaways, the strategic moves by the lawyers, maybe some surprising details, the really crucial back and forth from this cross-examination.
Yeah, we want to help you understand, like, what was the defense trying to do? How did Jane Doe hold up under that pressure? What were the big points they kept hitting? And really important, this is all based only on what this source material tells us.
Think of it as your shortcut, getting you informed on this really intense day in court without you having to wade through everything yourself.
Absolutely. But before we jump in, we really need to cover the essential context and the advisories. This stuff is critical.
Couldn't agree more. So first off, this is a federal case, U.S. versus Shawn P. Combs. And it's very much ongoing. It hasn't concluded.
Which means, and this is standard legal procedure everyone mentioned, is presumed innocent unless and until proven otherwise in a court of law. That's fundamental.
Absolutely. And it's also really important to flag that this case deals with highly sensitive information. The topics discussed are difficult, potentially triggering for some listeners.
So please, if you find discussions of, really tough subjects distressing, just be advised. Exercise caution. Maybe this isn't the deep dive for you.
And one more practical point, because of platform guidelines and the sensitive nature of the testimony itself, we're going to have to use alternative phrasing for certain words that came up in the source material.
Right. So if the transcript mentions things like, the specific terms for illegal substances or derogatory terms for women or graphic descriptions of intercourse or assault,
we'll be using phrases like illegal substance, B, lose woman, intercourse, S-A, D, or grape. We're doing this to stick to the rules, but still get across the essence of what was actually said in court, based on our source.
Okay. We'll make it clear when we're using those substitutes. So, with that really vital disclaimer out of the way, let's set the scene. Where did things stand at the end of day 21?
Right. So day 21, Jane Doe was on the stand. The defense attorney, Tiny Jaros, had started her cross-examination. And she came out swinging, really.
How so? What were the main points from that first day of cross-up?
Well, the defense immediately started bringing up messages Jane Doe had sent to Mr. Combs, messages that, on the surface at least, sounded pretty affectionate, or maybe showing some kind of financial interest.
Like the one about wanting diamonds. I remember that one. And didn't she call him the reason for her child's joy? That sounds quite significant.
Exactly. Those were the kinds of messages the defense highlighted. And the implication, seemed to be questioning where her discomfort really came from. Were these feelings purely about coercion, or was something else going on?
But Jane Doe pushed back on that interpretation.
She did. She was apparently quite firm in her testimony, saying, yes, she sent those messages, but they were about him, Mr. Combs, and they reflected just how complicated their relationship was.
Complicated seems like an understatement, based on her testimony.
Right. On direct examination, she talked about caring for him deeply, apparently got quite emotional, cried reading old messages, but also feeling like she just couldn't say no, especially about these hotel nights.
Those encounters involving other men, right? Which she said made him feel at peace.
That was her testimony. But at the same time, she felt this huge resentment because she said she loved him but felt manipulated because of that love. It's a really tangled emotional picture she painted.
Wow. And there was that incident at the party, too, the one involving non-illegal substances.
Yeah, where she apparently tried to break up with him but ended up staying over anyway. And then, maybe the most striking part for the defense, there was video evidence shown of them, like, laughing and embracing shortly after that supposed breakup attempt.
Okay, yeah, I can see how the defense would jump on that. Moments of closeness right next to claims of coercion and wanting out? That's tough stuff for a jury to sort through.
Absolutely. It highlights those contradictions, those complexities that make assessing credibility so challenging. The source also mentioned Mr. Combs himself in the courtroom, holding a self-help book, The Magic of Believing. Apparently been reading quite a bit since his arrest.
And his family was there? Mom, sister, sons?
Yep. Gallery had his family members present. High personal stakes, clearly. And the jury. Described as following everything very closely. Oh, and procedurally, the prosecution was trying to get juror number 6 removed for some reason.
Okay, so background stuff happening too. And what about the trial timeline? Any updates there?
The prosecution mentioned they had more witnesses after Jane Doe and were hoping to rest their case maybe next week, Wednesday or Friday, they thought.
Okay, so that brings us up to speed as day 22 gets underway. But it sounds like the jury didn't come right back in. There were some legal discussions first.
Precisely. Before the jury heard any more testimony, there were some pretty significant arguments and rulings happening just between the lawyers and the judge.
What was the main issue?
One big one was about a voice note. The defense wanted to play an audio message Mr. Combs had sent to Jane Doe's assistant.
Okay, interesting. What was the defense hoping the jury would hear in that note? Why did they think it was relevant?
Well, the defense lawyer, Mrs. Yaros, argued it was, quote, consistent with their theory of the case. She basically said the prosecution, during their questioning of Jane Doe, had opened the door, making this voice note relevant for context.
And the prosecution, U.S. Attorney Maureen Comey, what was her take?
She was strongly against playing it. Her argument was all about timing. This voice note was from December 2023. That's after the Cassie Ventura lawsuit went public.
Ah, so the argument was he knew legal trouble might be coming.
Exactly. Ms. Comey argued that by then, Mr. Combs would have known about potential litigation and could have been, essentially, trying to create a self-serving false narrative in his messages. She insisted the prosecution hadn't opened the door wide enough to justify letting the jury hear this specific recording.
So the prosecution saw it as potentially strategic damage control, not necessarily a genuine snapshot of his feelings at the time?
That seems to be the gist of it, yeah. And Judge Arun Subramanian, he ultimately sided with the prosecution on letting the recording itself in.
So the jury didn't get to hear the voice note?
Nope. The judge ruled the recording couldn't be admitted as actual evidence for them to listen to.
But I think I read the judge didn't completely shut down that line of inquiry.
That's right. It's a subtle but important legal point. Judge Subramanian said, okay, no recording, but, Ms. Giros, you can ask Jane Doe about what Mr. Combs told her. Specifically, what he said about his awareness of her feelings about the hotel nights back in December 2023.
So ask about the content of the conversation, just to not play the audio itself.
Exactly. She could question Jane Doe on what was said, what she understood him to mean, how she reacted, all that, just without the actual sound file being played as an exhibit.
Gotcha. The source also mentioned something about discussions in the judge's chambers. Robbing room.
Yeah, a brief huddle in the robing room involved Jane Doe, her lawyer, and the judge. Defense counsel asked to be there, too. Seems like it was about some documentation. Jane Doe's lawyer mentioned they'd submit a hit list of publications but hadn't filed yet.
Just procedural stuff, making sure everyone's aware of potential evidence.
Likely, yeah. And Mr. Combs wasn't there for that specific chat. He was taken back to a holding cell by the marshal.
And when he came back?
The source paints a picture of, intense legal strategy sessions. He was surrounded by, his team names mentioned were Nipolo, Shapiro, Steele, Xavier Donaldson, Nicole Westmoreland, lots of talking, gestures, then a private chat with Miss Westmoreland just before 10 a.m. Things were definitely buzzing before the jury came back.
Okay. And there was another debate before the jury returned. Something about pseudonyms?
Yes, another interesting procedural fight. This time it was defense attorney Igniplo. He objected to using pseudonyms for some people and emphasized the public nature of trials.
What was his argument there? Why push against pseudonyms?
His point was basically that trials are public for a reason. One key reason, he argued, is so that if other people were present during certain events, hearing the names and details might prompt them to come forward with their own relevant testimony.
And he objected to a specific pseudonym, Mia.
That's the one mentioned. And he specifically referenced the events in the hotel room on January 24th, 2024 seems related to that Vegas trip. He argued they had a constitutional right to a fully public trial and hadn't agreed to keep details of that specific event private.
So he wanted maximum public detail about that hotel room event, hoping it might shake loose other witnesses.
That's what he stated. He said the public nature allows information to get out, potentially reaching other witnesses, and he made a point of wanting his client, Mr. Combs, to hear him making this objection.
How did the prosecution respond to that?
Ms. Comey's response was pretty brief. Basically, if the answer to disclosing the name is still no, they're fine with it. She then characterized the defense pushing to say the name as potentially an attempt to harass.
And the judge, what was his take on this specific hotel room event?
Judge Subramanian seemed to think it was a bit of a side issue. He pointed out that this particular event wasn't one of the core SA trafficking allegations. He called it just collateral information.
Not central to the main charges.
Right. He said it wasn't a real concern in the grand scheme of the allegations, and knowing who else was in that room wasn't really a defense to the charges Mr. Combs is facing anyway. So he seemed unconvinced by the defense's argument on that point.
Okay, so after all that legal back and forth, the jury finally came back in.
Yep. The judge apologized for the delay, told them the court had been sorting things out to save time later, reminded Jane Doe she was still under oath, and then told Mrs. Garros to continue her cross-examination.
All right, so finally, back to the testimony itself.
Exactly. And Tiny Jarrus, the defense attorney, she picked right back up where she left off, going back to those messages Jane Doe sent to Mr. Combs.
The ones expressing affection or wanting to please him, like, I feel as your lover, I wanted to please you, push through.
Those ones. And also the line about wanting to cuddle with Mr. Combs. Jane Doe confirmed those messages were about their intimate time. It's pretty clear the defense strategy is to keep showing these messages, highlighting parts of the relationship that don't easily fit a simple coercion narrative, adding complexity.
Showing her emotional investment, maybe.
That seems to be the goal. There was also that small detail about a gift she gave him.
Oh, right, the TV.
Yeah, she confirmed getting him an LG cordless mobile TV for watching movies. Again, probably seems minor, but it adds to that picture the defense wants to paint of, a more reciprocal relationship with gift-giving and shared activities.
The questioning then jumped to a really significant time period right after the Cassie Ventura lawsuit hit the news.
Yes. Jane Doe testified that after that lawsuit became public, it made her realize, as she put it, another woman had already had the same experience she had.
So it validated her own feelings or experiences.
It sounds like it. She said she then put that energy on him, but she also said he was already down because of the lawsuit fallout. She described it as a hard month filled with resentment.
Okay, so the lawsuit intensified things between them. And this is where the content of that voice note came up again, even though the jury couldn't hear the audio.
Exactly. The defense used the content of the note Judge Subramanian had ruled on earlier, questioning her about what was said during that difficult period.
Right, using the judge's ruling that allowed questioning on the substance.
Precisely. So Mrs. Garros put phrases from the note to her, like Mr. Combs saying, I don't want to be in a relationship like this, or don't want to make anyone feel like this, and suggesting they end this cycle so you don't feel like I wasted your life.
And Jane Doe confirmed he said things like that.
Yes. She also confirmed he'd said things like, I'm a solutions person. I just want solutions. And she confirmed her own responses, too, like writing, I took on a lot of those rooms. Please don't discredit me. And his reply, never discredit you.
There were more messages like that, seeking solutions.
She confirmed more messages along the lines of, what do you want me to do to make you feel better? How can we get to a solution so we can move on? I don't want to make nobody feel like this.
How did she describe the general feeling between them during these exchanges?
She said it was a tough time for both, like they were equally pulled in our own emotional battlefields. She felt like she'd hit a wall, had a lot to process, and was trying to express her feelings while he was, quote, under fire for a lot of other things.
Did she believe him back then, in December 2023, when he seemed to be acknowledging her feelings or saying he wasn't aware?
Her testimony was that, yes, at that specific time, she did believe him when he said he hadn't known how she felt, was sorry, and didn't want her feeling that way anymore.
Interesting. Did things change in how they communicated after that?
She testified that after that period, Mr. Combs actually started encouraging her to be more communicative with him.
Okay, but then the defense shifted gears pretty significantly, didn't they, towards money?
Oh, yeah. This was a major pivot and clearly a cornerstone of the defense strategy. They introduced a message from Jane Doe.
What did it say?
She confirmed, under oath, that she had written to Mr. Combs stating she wanted $100,000 for each wasted year and more, which added up to $450,000. She confirmed she wrote that exact message in that specific amount.
Wow, $450,000 for wasted years.
Yeah.
That's a huge piece of evidence for the defense to put before the jury, isn't it?
Absolutely massive. Bringing up this specific, very large financial demand is clearly aimed at suggesting a possible monetary motive behind her claims, or at least complicating the narrative that everything she did was purely due to coercion. It plants that seed. Were financial factors a big part of the equation for her?
It definitely raises questions. She also mentioned texting him about suicidal thoughts.
Yes, she confirmed she wrote that she was thinking of harming herself, and she said he replied telling her, don't. saying he cared. But then when the defense asked if she believed he really cared, her answer was telling. I don't know about that. That adds a layer of doubt about his sincerity, at least in her mind now.
The defense also asked about her friends, her support system.
They did. Asked if she had friends back then. After an objection, it was rephrased. Did she talk about her feelings with Shawn because she didn't really have anyone else? She confirmed that. Maybe trying to portray her as isolated, potentially more dependent on him, could cut both ways for the jury, I suppose.
And they confirmed he was helping her financially?
Yes, she confirmed Shawn paid her rent. Another brick in the wall the defense is building about the financial ties between them, showing he provided support.
Then there was this mention of money from someone called Bear.
Right, another financial detail introduced by the defense. Jane Doe confirmed getting $9,000 from this person, Bear. Said she knew him from modeling, didn't have to do any work for the money, and crucially, she confirmed this rapper, Bear, was a close friend of Mr. Combs.
Okay, so she got money, no work required, from a close friend of Mr. Combs. What's the defense likely angle there?
Well, given their focus on money and motivations, bringing this up seems designed to suggest she received financial benefits not just directly from Combs, but also from his inner circle. It kind of broadens the picture of potential financial entanglement, maybe suggesting she was navigating a transactional environment, not just a one-on-one coercive relationship. Adds another layer to that financial narrative they're pushing.
Okay, that makes sense strategically.
Yeah.
Then the questioning shifted back to specific trips, right? Revisiting Las Vegas in January 2024.
Yep, circled right back to that Vegas trip. Jane Doe confirmed she went there with a friend, flew on a private jet owned by a rapper, and she specifically testified Mr. Combs did not know she was going because they were supposedly on a break.
And this rapper, the owner of the jet, was described as a big deal, an icon close to Combs.
That's how the defense characterized him, and she agreed. She confirmed the trip was for the birthday party of this rapper's girlfriend or wife.
And this is where Anton comes back into the story, the entertainer from the hotel nights.
Exactly. She testified that before this Vegas trip, both she and Mr. Combs already knew that Antoine also traveled sometimes to spend time with this same rapper and his partner. Apparently, Antoine had told them that.
So maybe not a total shocker to see him there.
She said she was a little bit surprised to see Antoine at the birthday dinner, but significantly, she added, no one asked how they knew each other.
Okay, and the defense asked about what happened later that night in a hotel room.
Yes. She described being in a room with about 7 or 8 other people and seeing Antoine having intercourse with the woman who was on the bed.
And the rapper who was hosting? He interacted with her too.
She testified that yes, the rapper who she'd known from a distance before flirted with her in that room. Said he thought she was beautiful and, using our alternative phrasing, always wanted to blank her.
And the defense asked about her own actions in that room.
They did. She confirmed, when asked, that she flashed her bee around the group in the room. She described it as just an in-the-moment thing.
They also asked if she referred other people, like within this lifestyle.
Yeah, Miss Jaros asked how she brought up Cabrielle or Sly, who seemed to be other entertainers. Jane Doe said they'd asked her if she knew anyone else in the lifestyle. She said yes, and that she felt at the time Carol was a safe and confidential person to suggest for the rapper and his partner.
How did she think they knew to even ask her?
Her speculation was maybe they just picked up the energy or heard that Shawn and I were into the lifestyle.
So this whole Vegas testimony, going there without Combs knowing, on his close friend's jet, seeing Antoine, her own actions like flashing, referring another entertainer, the defense is really using this to suggest she was an active participant in this scene, even separate from Combs, Ruzi.
That absolutely seems to be the strategic goal. Presenting these details aims to show her agency, her familiarity, maybe even comfort within aspects of this lifestyle. It directly counters a narrative of her only being a coerced victim, forced into things against her will.
It adds shades of gray for sure. The cross-examination then moved to another trip, Miami, for her birthday.
Yes, flew to Miami around her birthday. And she described Combs setting up this really grandiose birthday celebration for her. Sounded very romantic candles, hearts beating, pink and silver decorations, 5-course dinner. She said it was what I wanted for my lover.
Okay, sounds positive, but was there illegal substance use mentioned here too?
She clarified no illegal substance at the dinner. But she testified that afterwards she took a pill, Combs took a pill, and then another person, Dawn, came over.
And an encounter with Dawn followed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Her testimony was that she was willing to have intercourse with Dawn just because of her birthday party. She described the experience itself as nice.
Willing and nice. That description seems significant, especially compared to how she described other hotel nights.
Extremely significant from the defense's perspective. Highlighting an instance where she uses words like willing and nice creates a direct contrast with testimony about feeling pressured or unable to say no. The defense would argue this shows her participation wasn't uniform, her feelings varied, further complicating the picture of pure coercion.
They also brought up messages she exchanged with Paul Arthur, another person linked to the hotel nights.
Yes, showed messages where she asked him about Valentine's Day plans, saying she wanted to see Paul as a person. Again, suggesting maybe independent contact or interest outside of the encounters arranged by Combs.
And messages showing how the relationship with Shawn shifted after the Cassie lawsuit.
Right. She confirmed things changed. Sometimes he'd send messages saying, I'm single, I'm polyamorous, which she testified hurt her. But then after the lawsuit went public, he started saying things like, we are in a relationship, you're my girlfriend. And she testified that meant a lot to her.
So a real back and forth in how he defined things, clearly affecting her. And she reacted strongly to seeing that video of Combs and Cassie Ventura.
Very strongly. Testified it made her feel sick, that was not the man that you knew.
Did the defense touch on him trying to get into some kind of program after that?
Briefly. She recalled him trying. The defense tried to suggest the program didn't accept him, but the prosecution objected and the judge sustained it. So that suggestion didn't officially get to the jury.
And even after seeing that video, she stayed in touch with him.
Yes, confirmed she continued contact, stayed in Miami a few more days, then left. Mentioned he later went to LA with his kids in June, posted about it online. There were also photos shown from the Miami house around this time.
The giant champagne bottle.
That's the one, described as twice the normal size. Photos on the patio, some she took, some by Jonathan. Confirmed drinking champagne, tequila shots, but no illegal substance at that time. Jonathan also brought candles. Seems like they were setting the stage for what happened next.
Which involved playing a video in court.
Yeah, source just says, music and voice of calm championship Boston Celtics. Seems like context for the big event that followed almost immediately.
The physical fight in Miami.
Exactly. Jane Doe testified that about half an hour after that video played, they got into a physical fight.
Defense asked about alcohol.
She estimated 2 tequila shots, at least 2 glasses of champagne before the argument turned physical.
And what started it?
Confirmed it was about another woman in Miami who spent more time with Combs because she lived nearby, an issue they'd apparently argued about before.
She described herself as very emotional.
Yes, just a ball of emotion, feeling a lot of just resentment for many things had built up.
And she used some really harsh names for him.
Confirmed calling him a pedo, even knowing the woman wasn't underage, plus disgusting and a monster.
Was this the first time it got physical between them?
According to her testimony, yes. First physical altercation. And she testified she pushed his head into a marble counter, described the force as medium hard, also threw a candle at him.
She tried to get away when it escalated.
Yes, went to the bedroom, tried to lock the door, just a button lock, she clarified. Said he was outside saying things like, are you just not going to talk to me?
But he didn't stop there.
No. She testified he kicked the bedroom door open. She then ran into the master bathroom, locked that door, yelling she hated him, wanted him to leave her alone, recalled him calling her crazy, lots of yelling, him repeating, you're just going to act like you're not going to talk to me. Then, she testified, he kicked that door in two and she retreated into the closet.
The defense asked about her changing clothes in the closet, putting on a dress instead of workout gear.
Yeah, they noted she's serious about working out but chose a dress. Her explanation was practical, because I could put it on easily, trying to put on something comfortable, fast, to escape. The defense might imply something else, but her explanation framed it as purely about getting away.
What happened after the closet? Did the fight move outside?
Seems so. She testified that after the altercation went outside, she ran and hid behind a wall. Her phone was still inside the house.
And she encountered him again later.
Yes, saw him on the street hours later. Testified she was still angry, screaming, calling him pedo and monster. She specifically noted he did not kick her again at that point on the street.
But it wasn't quite over.
No. She testified that she punched him in the back of the head and then he punched her twice. So another physical exchange happened out on the street, hours after the initial fight inside. And right around here, the source notes a break for lunch, then more discussions in the robing room, a sidebar. Suggests pauses in testimony, legal stuff happening off stage. And they set up headphones for the jury, hinting that some sealed material, maybe audio or video not for public consumption, was coming up.
Okay, so when testimony picked back up, they were still on the Miami fight.
Yes, defense still probing details. She confirmed that during the fight, Combs yelled, "You're trying to get me to never see my kids again," shows his perspective, maybe fear, during the conflict. She also confirmed he was dragging her by her hair, and she was telling him to stop.
And she got hold of his phone at some point.
Yes, testified she took his phone.
And used it to call the other woman, the one the fight was about.
That's right. Recounted the call, asking things like, "Did you go to the Grand Canyon with him?" Trying to frame it. "Woman to woman, Barbara, this is Shirley." She said the other woman replied, "You're worried about the wrong thing." That's when Jane Doe says she told her, "Girl, he beating my bee." And then Shawn hung up the phone. Added the woman called back repeatedly, phone lit up.
Defense asked if the other woman called her a bee.
Confirmed yes. And maybe they talked about her past relationships. Also confirmed calling Jonathan during all this.
There was also that disturbing detail about the shower scene.
Yes. Testified she was naked in the shower, him in pants shorts, called him a son of a bee, then just a bee, then slapped him hard.
And after that, he grabbed her phone.
Yes. Testified he took her phone, started looking through messages.
And that's how the thread with Anton came up.
Exactly. While looking at her phone, he apparently saw the message thread about the Vegas trip in January and typed "Hi" to Anton right there in the chat.
Which led directly to the confrontation involving Anton coming over after the fight.
Yes. Jane Doe testified Combs asked her to have Anton come to the house. She said she drove from her home in the gated community maybe half a mile, a minute or two, slipped into sweatpants, drove her car to the gate to let Anton in, as requested.
And the defense specifically asked if she could have just driven away at that point, when she went to the gate.
They did. Asked if she could have left them. She said yes, she could have. That's a point the defense would seize on opportunity to leave, but didn't. She added there was nothing at the time stopping her letting him in.
So Anton arrives. Small talk.
Yes. She said the three of them, her, Combs, Anton, made small talk, then headed towards the bedroom area.
But Combs stopped her first.
That's her testimony. Pulled her into a guest bedroom, gave her a serious look, then demanded to know why Anton had texted about a mutual friend because Combs didn't think they had mutual friends.
And that's when she told him about being in Vegas in January, seeing Anton there.
Yes. Told him about the trip with the rapper, mentioned seeing Anton having intercourse with a woman in the hotel room.
Did she tell him everything about that Vegas night then?
She testified she did not tell Combs about flashing her bee in the room or about giving the rapper Sly another entertainer's number.
How did Combs react just hearing she was at the rapper's event and saw Anton?
Outraged, according to her testimony, yelling, "How could you go to another man's Freakoff?"
And then what did she say he told her to do regarding Anton, who is now right there in the house?
She testified Combs told her, "Go out and F him." She said she refused, said no. Then she testified he pushed a pill in her face, implying an illegal substance. She clarified she did not have intercourse with Anton, meaning penetrative, but did perform oral intercourse on him.
And then Anton left.
Yes. Said Shawn dismissed him, told her she'd send money later, which she confirmed she did.
She noted this encounter was different from previous ones involving entertainers.
Yes. Testified it was the first time she didn't have an intimate moment with Combs after the entertainer left. And she added that after Anton was gone, Combs just kept repeating his anger about the Vegas trip. "I can't believe you went to another man's Freakoff," referring to the rapper's party. He just kept saying, "How could you go to another rapper's Freakoff?"
So his angers seemed focused more on her attending the Vegas event than the encounter with Anton that just happened.
That's how she portrayed his reaction, yeah. After that whole Anton incident, she said she and Combs kept texting and calling, later went to see him, had a really long breakup talk, like 8 or 9 hours.
And she saw him traveling with someone else around then.
Yes, saw him with another woman in Wyoming, said it upset her, especially since she was, quote, "at home with a black eye." The defense did clarify later forced oral intercourse with Anton, yes, but no forced intercourse, meaning penetrative. And again, the source mentions a sealed video played for the jury with headphones during this part. Sensitive stuff, not public. Then the defense read more messages from Combs.
Like the one about not belittling himself for Bear, the rapper.
Right. "I'm not going to belittle myself for someone named Bear or my friend, and sorry I didn't take you on trips, I was tripping." Also mentions of baby daddy and KK, someone Jane Doe didn't like. Defense using his words again.
Okay, and this leads into a really critical part of the cross-examination, doesn't it? The OnlyFans testimony.
Absolutely crucial. This ties directly back to that defense theme of financial motivation. Jane Doe confirmed she brought up OnlyFans in a conversation or text exchange with Combs.
And confirmed she was actively earning money on it. For how long?
Yes, confirmed she'd been on it 4 to 5 months earning money. Active income stream.
Did the defense ask why she brought it up with Combs?
They asked if she'd questioned him about why he couldn't balance the hotel nights with giving her private travel experiences too.
And she confirmed writing something like, "Did the other girls just press you for more trips and I didn't? I just want to know where I went wrong."
That's the message she confirmed sending. It definitely sounds like she's questioning why she wasn't getting the same perks, maybe feeling like her approach wasn't yielding the results she wanted.
What was Combs' response shown in court?
Part of his response included, "That was my friend. I was okay. Where should we stop now?"
The exchange also included other details about her life, right? Frustrations.
Yeah, messages mentioning breaking up, going to a friend's party, not the rappers, not having postable stuff for Instagram, her child's father, being in her late 30s, don't have time, gives context to her broader life concerns.
She also wrote, "I just wanted to travel with you."
Yes, and then came that really pointed message. She sent a clown emoji, followed by using the alternative phrasing, "If I flub more, I could have had more trips."
Wow. That message linking more intercourse directly to getting more trips, plus the clown emoji. That's dynamite for the defense, isn't it?
Extremely potent. It can be read as her explicitly acknowledging a transactional dynamic, or at least her perception of one, that certain actions would lead to desired rewards like travel. It feeds right into their narrative questioning her motivations.
But the real number, the figure the defense hammered home, especially on recross, was her actual earnings from OnlyFans.
Yes. This was clearly a major strategic reveal for them. On recross-examination, the defense attorney pressed her, and Jane Doe confirmed. The most she had made on OnlyFans in a single month was $50,000. She did add that the amount varies month to month.
$50,000 in 1 month. That's not insignificant income.
Not at all. It's a very substantial amount. And putting that specific number before the jury is huge for the defense. Think about it alongside their other points. Her asking for $450K, getting rent paid, the $9 from Bear. Now add this $50 peak monthly income.
It allows him to argue she wasn't completely financially dependent on him, that she had her own serious earning power.
Precisely. It challenges any narrative suggesting she was trapped solely due to financial need imposed by him. It introduces this significant source of independent income derived from her own content creation. It adds another potential layer to her motivations, her choices, her level of agency, all things the defense wants the jury questioning when they assess her credibility and her claims of coercion.
It definitely complicates the picture of her financial vulnerability.
And that seems to be exactly what the defense intended by hitting that number hard.
Okay, so after that bombshell, the cross-examination moved on to later events.
Yeah, covered some later encounters, circled back to financials again. After that long breakup talk, she testified she went back to Miami, stayed at the Four Seasons this time, said it was her choice.
And described taking an illegal substance, feeling good.
Yes, laughing, dancing, feeling like she was finally getting the princess treatment she wanted.
And Paul Arthur came back into it during this trip.
Yes. She testified she told Combs she missed Paul. Noted she'd taken ecstasy when she said it, but insisted she genuinely did miss him. Called Paul, and he came down to Miami a few days later.
And they had intercourse.
Yes, confirmed having intercourse with Paul a few days later, specifically at Combs' Miami home. Also mentioned taking a different illegal substance then.
How did she describe that encounter with Paul?
This is another key description. She testified she felt in control, called it a great sexual experience, and recalled telling prosecutors it was a love fest.
In control. Great sexual experience.
Love fest.
Love fest. At Combs' house, again, that contrasts sharply with other testimony about feeling uncomfortable or forced during hotel nights.
Exactly her words about this specific time. And yes, the defense would absolutely emphasize that contrast, showing the variability in her experiences and feelings, arguing against a single, simple narrative of constant coercion. She did add, though, that this trip also ended with a fight about another woman, but they kept talking after.
They also looked at nicknames they used. And more messages.
Yeah, asked about her calling herself Kobe, Jordan, and Shaq. Her explanation was, she's the best, Kobe. He's the best, Jordan Shaq. Linked to some message about Pamela Anderson's melons. Also showed her message, you are definitely my Michael Jordan and I am Kobe Detox Weekend.
And that exchange where she says, "Good morning, handsome," and he replies asking her to find a therapist.
Yeah, confirmed that happened. When asked about the relationship overall, she acknowledged they loved each other, but there was toxic stuff. These messages just add more texture, showing that mix of affection and conflict.
Did she see Combs again before his arrest?
Yes, one last time. Miami, August 2024. His arrest was September 2024. She testified this final trip ended okay. But crucially, she confirmed under cross that she had told the defense in a pretrial meeting that the trip ended on a positive note. That little difference between okay and positive note might seem small, but the defense highlights it as a potential inconsistency. Then came the recross examination, where Mrs. Garros really zeroed in on some key points again.
Like circling back to the Anton incident.
Exactly. Asking again, could she have just left when she drove to the gate? She confirmed, yes, she could have. Emphasized that the only time nothing sexual happened with Anton was Vegas in Jan 2024, contrasting it with her letting him into her home after the Miami fight.
And her physical strength came up again, lifting weights.
Yes, confirmed she lifts heavy. This came right after talking about the fight where she hit Kama's head and referencing the Cassie Ventura video. Then the defense lawyer posed that sort of statement question, but a woman's power does not override a man's, seeming to imply that despite her strength or actions, there was still an inherent power imbalance favoring him.
They also reconfirmed she referred Cabell to another rapper in January 2024.
Yes, hitting that point again about her network connections. Then Mrs. Garros asked that pointed question, contrasting money and her home. You'd give up money to not have intercourse, but you wouldn't give up your home. Jane Doe's answer focused on her child. My child and I live there. It's hard. Pits financial choice against basic security for her child.
And they nailed down her independent child support income.
Confirmed $5,000 a month. Child's father is a very rich man. Adds to that picture of her having financial resources beyond Combs, along with the OnlyFans money.
And the total amount wired from Combs.
Confirmed it was $150,000 over 3 years. Then Mrs. Garros asked that loaded question, is that all 3 years of mine is worth? Jane Doe shot back she believes she's worth more than $150,000. A direct clash over the financial value of her time or the relationship.
And one last hit on the OnlyFans number during recross.
Yep, confirmed again. Most made in 1 month, $50,000. Varies, but that peak number was repeated, driving home that point about her earning potential right at the end of her cross.
Other quick points mentioned, using hungry to mean no intercourse.
Yes, confirmed she used that, and Combs knew what it meant, gave her food. Also confirmed telling Cabell intercourse with him had been great. Little details exploring communication, past statements, potential inconsistencies.
And the mobile TV gift. A different reason for it came out.
Yeah, her explanation on cross was interesting. Said she got it to show Combs videos of her having intercourse with entertainers so she wouldn't have to do it herself sometimes. Said sometimes they just watch the videos, no actual intercourse happened then. Adds complexity to even that seemingly simple gift.
How did she sum up all these experiences near the end?
Used strong language. All of it was B, using the alternative term. The judge stepped in, told her to just answer the question directly, suggesting it was more commentary than fact.
Her prep for testifying was mentioned. Seeing my truth.
Yes, confirmed seeing documents she termed my truth.
And seeing records of times she didn't have hotel nights.
Described those as lucky me, thank God. Confirmed those encounters didn't happen every time.
And that final bit about seeing messages from Shawn, telling Paul to persuade her. How did that affect her testimony?
That was significant. The judge made her answer how seeing those messages made her feel. Her response, after seeing those, probably I did have a hotel night. Defense immediately asked if she was changing her testimony based on the messages. She said no. But that's powerful, linking his instruction to persuade directly to her feeling she then probably had an encounter, could really bolster the prosecution's argument about influence or coercion. After all that, the prosecution got a very brief chance for redirect.
What'd they focus on?
Just one main point. Asking about violence right before Combs asked her to go pick up Anton after the Miami fight.
And her answer.
Confirmed he slapped her before making that request. And that was it for redirect.
So Jane Doe's testimony finally concluded. She left the stand, jury left.
Yep. And the source notes the lawyers immediately started talking about summary charts for the next witness, Miss Sanker. Shows how relentless the trial pace is, moving right along even after days of intense testimony from one witness.
Okay, so let's try to wrap our heads around this deep dive into day 22.
Yep.
We really focused on that long, intense cross-examination of Jane Doe by the defense.
Definitely. We saw the defense use her own words against her repeatedly, those affectionate messages, the ones about wanting things, that huge $450,000 demand, the OnlyFans discussion. They dug into her actions during the Vegas trip, the Miami fight, her interactions with Bear, Paul, Anton, always circling back to financial angles and questioning her agency.
And that $50,000 peak monthly OnlyFans income was clearly a massive piece for them. Presented as evidence, she had significant independent earning power, challenging the idea she was purely financially dependent or trapped.
Right. And Jane Doe, she responded to all this, sometimes got emotional, sometimes gave detailed explanations, sometimes gave answers the defense tried to frame as inconsistent. She stuck to her core story, but also acknowledged the relationship's complexity, her own feelings, her own actions in these really difficult situations.
We also saw those legal arguments happening before the jury came, in the fight over the voice note, the debate about pseudonyms and public access, showing how much strategy happens even outside the jury's view. This deep dive, sticking just to the source for day 22, hopefully gives you, the listener, a really detailed look at how the defense tried to pick apart the prosecution's case through this key witness.
It absolutely highlights just how messy and complicated these trials can be, especially when they involve relationships, conflicting messages, money, and very sensitive allegations. So many details for a jury to weigh.
So maybe here's something to think about after hearing all this. We've heard Jane Doe's detailed accounts, her stated feelings and frustrations. We've also heard the defense relentlessly bring up financial details, the $150 over 3 years, the $450 demand, the child support, and especially that $50,000 a month figure from OnlyFans. They use her own words, her own actions. How does hearing this specific cross-examination, based just on our source, affect how you think about the huge challenge of assessing someone's credibility, both for the lawyers presenting it and the jury deciding it, in a case this complex and personal?
It's definitely a lot to mull over. Different pieces of evidence pull you in different directions, don't they?
They really do. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into a really pivotal day in court. As always, keep seeking out informed perspectives,